Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to some of you. We're so glad that you're joining us. And I'm so excited to be back here again with ICANotes. And today we're going to be talking about supporting the family in navigating addiction. Let's jump right in. You can see our learning objectives that you see on the screen here. I just want to make a quick note about your materials. If you go to the Handouts tab, you will find the PowerPoint, the PDF handout packet, and the resource links. The resource links are going to have a bunch of different extra resources, great stuff in there. So, all three of those documents are your course materials, and you can find those in the Handouts tab. Okay, so you can see our focus today of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to briefly talk about the family system and how the family system is impacted by addiction. We're also going to look at the ways in which we can understand the dynamics of what families experience in addiction. And then we'll talk about ways that we can support families. Our role as helpers, if you are a social worker, a counselor, a therapist, a case manager, a psychologist, any of those individuals in our field are very well equipped to be able to provide effective support to families that are trying to navigate addiction. As we begin, and I love that you all are introducing yourselves, by the way, love to see where everybody's from and what your disciplines are. Let's just begin by talking about a few key considerations regarding addiction and families. We know that it can be very painful for family members when they have a loved one that is struggling with addiction. And we know that addiction does not just impact the individual that has that substance use, but also it impacts all of the individuals that are in that family system to different degrees and in different ways. We also know that there can be a lot of stressful experiences. There can be ambiguous loss of having this loved one that is still alive, but some family members have described that they feel as though their loved one with the addiction is dead, is gone, is a ghost of who they were. And so there's many different complex feelings and experiences that family members do have. We also know that in response to addiction, family members may engage in certain behaviors, may do certain things, and we're going to look at examples of those here as we continue. And we find that drugs and alcohol really can lead to this shift in the family system. And as professionals, us recognizing those shifts, normalizing those shifts to the family members, and then offering the support and guidance of how they can navigate their loved one's addiction is really what's central to what we're discussing today. Welcome to those of you just introducing yourself. Hello. To this note, I would like to read to you a metaphor. I love metaphors. I love to be able to bring metaphors into our work, either in trainings or with my clients. Let me share with you a metaphor that may help us understand on a deeper level what families experience and what our role is. And I'm going to read this to you, so feel free to just use this as a mindful moment. A family facing a loved one's addiction is like a crew in a small boat caught in a relentless storm. The addicted person may be gripping the wheel, but the storm, fueled by substance abuse, thrashes everyone aboard. Some family members bail water, desperately trying to keep the vessel afloat. Others take turns steering, hoping to find a break in the clouds. Tensions rise, exhaustion sets in, and blame sometimes gets thrown around like loose cargo. Still, no one wants to abandon ship. They hold on, bruised, soaked, and scared, because love, like the boat itself, is what keeps them together. A therapist enters like a lighthouse keeper, offering guidance from the shore. They don't calm the storm, but they help the family read the waves, recognize dangerous patterns, and chart safer courses. The therapist teaches the crew how to communicate more effectively, set healthy boundaries, and understand the difference between helping and enabling. With their help, the family begins to row in rhythm again, not perfectly, but with more purpose and direction towards steadier waters. So I think that gives us all a pretty good illustrative picture of this family being on this boat. And as you saw, there's this loose cargo. There's some family members that are trying to bail water. Other family members are doing other things. And then we have the therapist that enters as the lighthouse keeper, offering to chart a safer course with the family to help the family find a safer course. We see that the therapist helps the family find more purpose and direction towards steadier waters. Okay, I'd like us to watch a brief video clip. This is from the show Intervention. This is a man named Robin who at one time overcame a drinking problem and became a successful pilot. The stress of being away from his wife and children drove him back to alcohol. Robin eventually destroyed his career and family. His wife divorced him, and now he's separated from his children. Robin's parents and brothers believe that the brilliant pilot is still in there somewhere, but without an intervention, they're fearful that Robin may spiral to a horrible death. So I titled this video Delicious Chicken, and I think after we watch the clip, you will understand why.
What you want? What is you want? I want to say hi. Update. No. We're going to stop trying it. And to big. Oh, talk day. And when you say you will do. He's grandpa. He's my grandpa. Yes, oh yeah. My parents don't really know my son. He's my first son. He's just 10 months old. There was an incident at Christmas where my wife was holding the baby in her arms. I had to go to the car to get something. And when I came back in, Robin had taken my son forcefully and he was drunk. With Robin living at their house, my wife doesn't want to go over there. I don't feel it's safe and it's just not comfortable. It's my guy. There. You're very clever. You're very clever.
Yeah, Scott and I have never been with Robin in quite a long time. All three of us together at once. Where's Robin?
He's down in his room.
Come on.
I think so.
I don't know what's going to happen.
I got a good one. There you go. That will right there. Come on. Oh. We can't roll it, isn't it? Oh, that's how you do this.
Of course.
Hey, big. What's the big guy eating there, Scott? Yeah, I don't know. Some sort of puff. Sure. A puff of some sort. You got your own chair and everything. How old's Shirley now, Scott? 10 months. This cute kid, Scott.
Where were you?
I was downstairs. And yes, I do drink. A lot. Don't seem to do much else. Delicious chicken. It's really good, Bob. How about those Oilers? Or punch you in the face. That's nice.
I'll come across the table in a second and punch you in the face.
That's the reason we don't come around with Charlie, Robin. You don't think it pisses me off that my son doesn't see his grandparents because we don't feel safe coming around here? Wait, you don't really give us an option.
Why do you say something nice to me? No?
Apologizing.
Will you stop?
You're upsetting mom for nothing. I'm setting on for 20 years.
I can get you right now with a fork in the face.
You can barely stand up.
I see. Trying to help you.
I'm sorry I make everyone feel uncomfortable, fun, blah, blah, blah.
Maybe it's time to look inwards and see why nobody wants to be around you.
My kids want to be around me.
I don't know. I rarely even hear you mention them.
Never tell me I don't care about my kids.
Prove
You keep.
that you like those kids. Sober yourself up and get them back.
I'm allowed to talk to my kid once a week.
And doesn't that make you want to maybe get better?
I can't go home.
This is the consequences of what you've done.
Can't go home.
You act like there's nothing you can do about it.
And everything to do with me.
And there is something you can do about it. This conversation is over. I'm leaving the table. Scott, you're going to leave the table, and the conversation is finished. My family has all but disintegrated since Robin has come back in the picture. We used to be so close.
It affects everybody. It's ruining everyone's life.
So now,
Okay. Thank you, Angela, for playing that video. So what did you all notice in this clip, Delicious Chicken with Robin and his family? What are your observations? What were you feeling in terms of what you think was the energy there around the dinner table? Feel free to share in the chat. Yes, Nicole, the mom, grandma that just continued to eat and was completely removed from the scenario, just as if they were having a normal dinner, she completely blocked it all out. The power struggles, you see the impact of addiction on the family system. You saw that the wife, the daughter-in-law, she was very vocal, and you could really feel her anger and her frustration. And then the relationship between the three brothers and the tension that you saw there. And you really see that both of the parents make attempts to try to divert away from this, right? The dad says delicious chicken. And the mom just completely does not even engage in any of the conversation. And so we see here just in this 5-minute clip that there are absolutely impacts of addiction on the entire family system. We now have a new grandchild that is disconnected from his grandparents because the parents, with good reason, don't feel very comfortable bringing their baby over to the grandparents' house. So we see a lot of impact. We see a lot of sadness, avoidance. And we see that this is a family trying to come together to have a meal. 3 generations. And unfortunately, we see how the dinner ends. The dad becomes very directive, almost as if, his grown sons or children, and says, we're done. You're leaving the table. And that's how the dad kind of shuts this down. So we see a lot of different examples of how the family is, as we saw in the metaphor I shared earlier, flailing around. And one family member is bailing water. One is just standing there staring. Another family member is just angry and wants a solution. And we really see that playing out here in this clip of Robin with his family at dinner. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the experiences of families. You can see here on our next slide, we have characteristics of the addicted, traumatized family system. In the middle, you're going to see what we identify as therapists as the normative, adaptive, healthy way that families communicate, connect, solve problems, work through difficulties, balanced functioning, self-regulation, talking things out. You really didn't see any of those things here in this family system because it's been poisoned by addiction. What we do see is we do see these extremes either on the left or on the right. So think about the clip in each of the family members. Think about mom, grandma, think about dad, think about the brothers, think about Robin. Think about how they all, as you said, responded in these extreme ways, these extreme ranges of functioning that we know begin to permeate families. Your first handout, just to give you a little shout out to your first handout, is characteristics of adult children in trauma and addiction. So this is going to give you even more detail on how we really believe that addiction begins to create trauma within families. And I think we saw some of that in this video. And we saw that each family member is being impacted in different ways, probably experiencing different degrees of trauma. And because they're such an unhealthy system now, they don't have the ability to talk about that, to process that. And so that is where we find that families experience these extreme ranges of functioning. I'm curious what you all think. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Why do you think that families and family members of people with addiction are hesitant to engage in services? What do you think are some of the reasons why we don't find a lot of families that are actively seeking out counseling or supportive services? What do you think are some of those barriers or the reasons why family members may not be proactive or seek out counseling for themselves? Yes, Brett and Nicole, definitely shame. As much as we talk about addiction, as much as we try to normalize it, the reality is shame is fueled by the secrecy. Brene Brown talks about this, that shame grows and thrives in secrecy. A lot of families want to keep it secret. The stigma, Anna, as you mentioned, the judgment. Also, a few of you are mentioning that they may be worried that family history or trauma may come out. That's a really good point, Nicole. And then Tammy, they don't see themselves as being part of the problem. What we may hear from family members is, as long as my loved one with the addiction gets treatment, everything in the family is going to be fine. And we know that is not true, don't we? We know that the family really needs treatment as well. They need to be able to get that professional support, and they need to be able to relearn, just as the person with addiction is also relearning as they go through recovery and treatment. Everything that you all are mentioning, as we see on the next slide, the fear of judgment, the embarrassment, the learned helplessness, which we know is a real phenomenon where people are so overwhelmed and discouraged, especially family members like Robin's, where he's coming in and out of his alcohol use. And so they may feel a sense of futility. The other thing we need to look at is cultural or familial messages. We'll handle things within the family. We don't go to outsiders. So even if family members are offered help or think that they may need some support, they may not be comfortable doing that because of some of those cultural or family norms. And the other reason, quite frankly, is it may mean that we need to acknowledge that there is a problem. Not just that we have a loved one with addiction, but that we have a problem in our family system, either as a result of the addiction or prior to the addiction. And by going to a counselor, that means that we really need to acknowledge that there is a problem. And then, as you said, Melanie, a fear of change. Yes. The fatigue, Claire, absolutely. And that's that learned helplessness. Let's do a little bit of a matching exercise. One of the things that we have known for decades now, especially with Dr. Murray Bowen, who is the founder of family systems theory, is that people often take on different roles within a family whenever the family system is being compromised, as we see with Robin's family. So in the column on the left, we have 6 different roles that family members assume. And then on the right, we have the description. So what I'd love for you all to do is to think as you look at this list. As we go through these, I'm going to give you an opportunity to put into the chat which of these descriptions, and you could just put the number, do you think aligns with the family role? What about A, the person with addiction? What do you think would be the appropriate role or description of this individual in the family from the 6 choices? If you guess number 3, that is correct. And we saw that in the Robin video, right? Robin is the nucleus of what's going on within the family. Were there issues before his addiction? Probably. But at this point in time, he is the central figure. He is the person with addiction. What about number 2, or B, actually, the enabler? Which of the descriptions do you think aligns with the role of the enabler? If you guessed 6, protects the addict from consequences by covering up or making excuses. Yes, and if you watch the entire episode of Intervention, both of Robin's parents are clear enablers. They've allowed him to move back home. They allow him to use alcohol in the home. They allow him to be at family dinners where he is disruptive. They have not put up any boundaries. They give him money to go buy alcohol. So we have a clear idea, if you watch that entire episode, of examples of enabling. What about C, the hero? Which description do you think aligns with the hero? The hero, this is the one that tries to be the shining star. So that would be number 4, the overachiever who tries to make the family look functional and successful. They get perfect grades. They try to make their appearance perfect. They try to counterbalance what is going on within the family. And this is the individual that we would identify as in the role of the hero. What about D, the scapegoat? This is a common role that we see in families. Sometimes the phrase is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So which of the descriptions do you think aligns with the scapegoat? Yes, this is number 2. The squeaky wheel is going to be acting out, breaking rules. They want to draw attention away from the person using drugs. And they try to do that, and they become the scapegoat. This may be the individual that is thrust into individual therapy. They are the problem in the family, is what the family members say. But if we dig deeper, we realize that they are merely just the scapegoat for a deeper problem. And then what about E, the lost child? The lost child. Yes. Quiet and withdrawn. They avoid conflict. Everybody else thinks that this child is okay. And this could be a grown child as well. This could be an adult child. Everybody thinks that this child is just fine because they're quiet. They don't make waves. They just deal with the conflict, but they are lost. It's, if we go back to our boat analogy, it's having a crew member that you can't account for. Nobody knows where this crew member is because they're just off on their own. They're withdrawn and they're really conflict avoidant. And then finally, the mascot. So that leaves one last choice. The mascot. We may see that some of our best famous comedians experienced childhood trauma and family dysfunction and used humor or charm to deflect tension and avoid addressing pain. And that became their talent, that became their career. And for a lot of our comedians that have talked about their childhoods, it makes sense. When we look at their early life experiences, they try to use humor and they try to reduce the tension. This would be the equivalent of, we heard in the video, how about them Oilers? It was one of the brothers. And that was his attempt in that moment of being in the role of the mascot. How about, let's talk about sports. Let's talk about something else. Let me try to break this tension. And that's the role that I need to be in right now. Okay, great job on looking at the family roles. Our job as clinicians is to be able to, if we're working with a family, to identify which of these roles might a family member be going into. Keep in mind that a family member can be in multiple roles. So they may be the mascot now, but maybe next week they become the scapegoat or they become the enabler. So there can be a lot of fluidity between these roles as well. Codependency, probably a term that we've all heard of. You probably remember the book from the 80s by Melody Beattie, Codependent No More, which was the beginning of our understanding of this concept of codependency. And codependency is really this system of thinking, feeling, and behaving in ways that often lead to us doing things that are self-destructive, forming habits such as being an enabler or not being able to have healthy boundaries with somebody like Robin, who is really struggling with extreme alcohol use, is not very respectful, really makes people feel unsafe. Yet the parents especially allow the dinner to continue with Robin making threats such as, I could stab you with the fork. And so that is where we begin to see the elements of codependency brewing and presenting themselves within families. You can see here in these bullet points the impact of these particular behaviors: destructive relationships, sabotaging, lack of peace and happiness. This was not a peaceful family dinner at all. Did any of you notice that before Robin arrived at the table, the rest of the family was having just general conversation and seemed to be relatively relaxed? And then as soon as Robin walked into the dining room, the energy in the room changed and shifted. And so the happiness, the peace, the comfort, the serenity, the connection that we all want and need in families, it becomes absent and it is starved when people are behaving in codependent ways. Here's some of the most common characteristics that we see in codependence. And as you're thinking about maybe families you work with, especially with addiction or other types of challenges within the family, you've probably seen some of these. We definitely saw denial, especially with the mom, the matriarch of the family, as she was just eating her corn and she was really into her corn on the cob because that helped her be removed from what was happening in the actual environment. We also saw poor communication. There's a lack of trust in this family of having the baby around Robin and within this home environment. We definitely saw that. We saw weak boundaries, and then we also saw dad trying to control, right? Enough, everybody leave, you're leaving the table, and we are done. And so these are some of those elements that family members don't often recognize. It's our job as the lighthouse keeper to shine a light for families on these common characteristics of codependency and how we can support them in beginning to do their own work and beginning to start to chip away at the codependency that has been built. One of the ways that we do that, I just wanted to share, obviously there's quite a bit that you can go into on codependency, but I wanted to share one of the ways that we can begin to help families look at a possible different perspective. And this is called the 7 C's. I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I can't cure it. I can help take care of myself by communicating my feelings and making healthy choices and celebrating me. So this is a concrete and a structured way that we can begin to help family members open up to the possibility of there might be a different way to approach your loved one that is struggling with addiction, that doesn't start to consume you. And I love the quote that says, "Do not set yourself on fire to keep others warm." I've often shared that with some of my family members as I've worked with them, and that has been pretty profound for them because they realize they are burning themselves to the core. They are sacrificing themselves, even if it's for somebody they love, care about, but they are slowly sacrificing themselves physically, emotionally, cognitively, spiritually. And part of our role in working with families is to help them prevent more of that self-sacrifice. So here are some general clinical recommendations in working with families and supporting families. As you see here, as we all know, the strong therapeutic alliance is very important. Psychoeducation. Do not minimize the value, as you all probably know, of psychoeducation before we start to launch into treatment goals or interventions. Let's make sure that families have some awareness of the dynamics of what addiction causes within a system, that they have an understanding of the different roles that we just looked at, and they have an understanding of what codependency creates. We can also encourage connecting with community resources such as Al-Anon, other supportive community groups that family members can connect with. There are virtual groups now that are available, even outside of the AA model. There are family smart recovery groups. So there's many different options, but really connecting family members with groups. NAMI Family to Family Program is another great resource. National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, they have a family to family entire national program that has local virtual chapters. And that is a great resource, especially for family members, which we often know there's co-occurrence with addiction. There's a co-occurring mental health disorder. Motivational interviewing, meeting the family members where they're at in the change process, pre-contemplation. That's going to be different than a family member that is saying to you, I am ready to change the locks. I am ready to hold this line with my son, and this is what I'm ready to do. That is going to be a different position than a family member that says, I am not going to do anything different. I'm not ready to do anything different. Also, this dialectical approach, which I think is very valuable, this comes from DBT, strategies for ways that the family can be healthy and also support their loved one in an appropriate way dealing with their addiction. How can we still be a healthy family and also have boundaries and expectations of our loved one with regard to their addiction? And then here's a recommendation to always make a note of: avoid being triangulated with members of the family, where a particular member of the family wants you to align with them against another member of the family. That is what we would call triangulation. It can happen subtly, but we really need to be aware that we are remaining as supportive, but also as neutral as possible, that we're not forming alignments or allegiance with one particular family member against another family member. So on the next, let's see here, 2 slides, I have an example of a script of what a conversation might look like between a therapist and a family member of somebody that has addiction. So let's take a look at this. The client says, I just don't know what else to do. My brother keeps relapsing and it's destroying our family. I feel guilty if I pull back, but I can't keep living like this. Side note, this sounds a lot like, coincidentally, Robin's family. I did not create this scenario with that intention, but it's sounding like that. Therapist uses active listening and validation. It sounds like you're carrying a lot right now: guilt, exhaustion, and a deep love for your brother. That's a very heavy burden. It makes sense you're feeling torn. Client says, exactly, I want to help, but I feel like nothing I do is ever enough. Now the therapist brings in reflective listening and a motivational interviewing technique. You're doing everything you can, and yet you still feel helpless. That must be incredibly frustrating. Yeah, I keep asking myself if I'm enabling him somehow. Now is an opportunity based on the client's statement to provide psychoeducation. That's a really important question. Addiction impacts the entire family system. It's common for loved ones to fall into patterns of enabling without even realizing it. We could talk about the difference between support and enabling, and how setting boundaries can actually be a form of love. Client says, but setting boundaries feels like giving up on him, which is a very common response we get from family members, right? Therapist, again, MI and boundary setting techniques. I hear that fear, but setting boundaries isn't the same as giving up. It's about protecting your well-being so you can continue being in his life in a healthier way. Can we explore what a healthy boundary might look like for you? Maybe not giving him money anymore. That could be one boundary, and we'd also talk about how to communicate it with compassion. You're not abandoning him, you're shifting how to support him in a way that encourages accountability rather than dependency. Client says, that makes sense. I never thought of it like that. And then we can end by offering normalization and emotional support. This is really hard work, and you're doing it with care and reflection. You're not alone. Many families face these exact struggles. We can continue working together on how to care for yourself while staying connected to your brother in a healthy way. So that gives us a little bit of an idea of how we can weave in some of these therapeutic techniques into just one conversation with a client that has a family member with addiction. And we can see here how the client has brought up valid points. The therapist has woven in strategically some of these different avenues of how they can respond and encourage the client to perhaps consider a different perspective. So I hope that's helpful just to work through a little bit of a script example of a few minutes in a session with a family member. Let's talk for a minute about interventions. And I just want to mention the handouts that you have available. You have several handouts that are available. Let's first talk about interventions. Do interventions work? So we actually have little data on the effectiveness of interventions because it can be difficult for us to define what is effective. Is it that somebody goes into treatment after the intervention? Is it that they are clean and sober after 30 days? We don't really have what we're measuring. So there's not a lot of data. The other thing is that people with addictions are more likely to seek treatment when they do undergo an intervention, but that may not affect the outcome of the treatment itself. And so that also is important. And so people who do say yes to an intervention, that may or may not impact the outcome of their treatment. There are people that say yes to the intervention, but then they leave treatment after a week or so. And there are people that say no to the intervention, and then they're able to walk on a path of recovery. What we do know is that interventions can be successful in being able to be that bridge to get people into treatment. Whether or not they lead to long-term success in sobriety is something we don't have the data on. But we do know that interventions can increase the chances of a person walking through the doors of that treatment center. So there might be some of that inherent value of getting them quicker into treatment, which certainly can be advantageous, especially if they are very physically ill or their addiction is extremely serious and we're worried about their well-being. Getting them into treatment and then in today may actually save their life. And so that actually may produce some good outcomes. But long term, we don't know if interventions are actually successful. The reason why I'm just briefly talking about interventions is this is often what a family thinks is going to be the secret to resolving their loved one's addiction. And we need to be very clear with family members that while interventions, as I said, may get that person into treatment if they say yes, it's not a guarantee that they're going to stay in treatment or that they're going to find long-term sobriety. So we need to just provide some reality therapy to family members that we can consider an intervention. And we also need to be realistic about what we're hoping to accomplish. The goal of an intervention is to get the person just into treatment. And the future of that person's outcome will be dependent on many other factors. But if we can get a person into treatment, especially a good treatment program for them, that may be very advantageous for them. And an intervention can also be done for the family as well. And we can get the family into some treatment as well. I wanted to mention that I included an intervention checklist. So if you do have family members that are going to be doing an intervention, I have provided you with a pretty good checklist of what needs to happen. The main suggestion is there needs to be a professional that is coordinating the intervention. It's not recommended that the family just do it themselves. We really need to have a clinical social worker, an interventionist, a SUDS counselor. Somebody needs to be coordinating this that is not inside of the family. Yeah, Claire, the show Intervention, they keep some statistics actually. They follow members, they provide aftercare, they provide resources and treatment to family members. And they do follow a lot of the individuals that have been on the show. And I believe that the success rate is about 4 out of 10 of the individuals that have been on intervention have found longer term sobriety. Not great, but 4 out of 10 people is 4 out of 10 people. And so that is 4 people that have said the intervention on this show saved my life and allowed me to now be able to walk the path of recovery. So they don't have great outcomes. And it's also true for most interventions that we do that's not on a TV show. The outcomes are also not that great. But again, we also don't have a lot of research that gives us some definitive numbers. You also have a variety of other handouts here that I will let you take a look at. You have family problem solving, conducting a family session. You have some questionnaires for family members to complete where they can provide you with very important data on how is our family functioning? What is my perception of how our family is functioning? You have a personal impact log where family members can start to write down how are they being impacted by their loved one's addiction or by the behaviors of other people in the family. How are they being impacted by the enabler or by the scapegoat? And so lots of these handouts therapeutically will be very good resources. Self-compassion break. How can we encourage family members to give themselves a self-compassion break when they believe that their loved one is still addicted to drugs because they have failed, because they're not doing enough, because they need to do something different? So lots of great handouts that really are going to hopefully support you in helping to support your families in navigating addiction. Let's look at a brief case study applying CBT approaches. This is Marsha's daughter has been a heavy opioid user for 5 years and struggles with staying clean. For the past 2 years, Marsha's life has become consumed with rescuing her daughter. She was recently fired from her job for being too distracted from her work responsibilities. Marsha reports being overwhelmed with thoughts and beliefs that she is responsible for saving her daughter and that her life has no meaning as long as her daughter is still using drugs. So already we can get an idea of Marsha's automatic thoughts that are consuming her life. Now they're impacting Marsha's life. She's lost her job. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. And family members often do have unhelpful beliefs regarding their loved one's addiction. So CBT approaches with clients like Marsha could be very helpful to target that core belief system. Let's take a look at on the top. You see the current kind of trajectory of what Marsha experiences. The situation is she cannot reach her daughter for 2 days. Her automatic thought is she's dead. I should have helped her more. This is my fault. Then you see the degree to which she feels guilt, worry, and sadness. Chest hurting, no appetite. And now she's starting to cope. This is very interesting. Now Marsha's starting to cope by herself starting to use substances, calling in sick, and excessive crying. And then the outcome is, as we saw, loses her job, headaches because of the wine and the stress. And then her quality of life really has been compromised. Let's imagine after we've worked with Marsha for maybe several weeks and she's done a thought record log and she's tracking and we've introduced to her cognitive distortions, cognitive restructuring. Let's imagine that this might be Marsha's new experience with the same situation. She still can't reach her daughter for 2 days. But here's where things begin to shift. The unknown is hard with addiction. I hope that she is alive and safe. This is not my fault. And now you see, because Marsha's been able to shift into this more adaptive, realistic, helpful perspective, now we see she still feels guilt, worry, and sadness, but look at the degree to which she's experiencing these emotions versus in the first column. Then we see her physical responses, still heaviness. That will never disappear when you have a loved one with addiction. But we also see that her behavior now is potentially different. Instead of hours of crying, 5 minutes of weeping for her daughter and the worry and the sadness. And then she's able to make dinner and she goes to her job and she does a good job at the work meeting. And her boss says, good job. So she's able to keep her job. And then she invites a friend over for dinner. Maybe a way for me to distract myself is to have a meal with someone, to have some companionship and connection if I'm not able to connect with my daughter. So keep in mind, this is over several weeks of providing supportive care to your client, but this is the potential here. And this is the reality of what a lot of our clients are experiencing in their own thought process of their family member's addiction. The other technique that we can use, pulling in a little bit of Gestalt therapy, is the empty chair exercise. This is a role play where the client faces an empty chair and they either write a letter or they just spontaneously talk to their loved one with addiction that they may or may not have contact with. And if you look at your handout, the empty chair technique, I provided you with the explanation of what this exercise is. And this is a very therapeutic exercise that allows your client, a family member, to have the opportunity in a metaphorical sense to express, to release, to communicate what they need to communicate with your support, and then to process what that experience is like afterwards. And you can see here all of, on the right-hand side, the benefits, what the family member can talk about, the relationship, boundaries. I'm releasing this emotion. I'm releasing myself from the responsibility of resolving your addiction. And I'm letting you know that now. The person is not actually there. The family member is not physically there. This is a metaphorical exercise. It can help to address some of those internal conflicts, such as, I want to take control of my life, but I can't say no when she asks me for money. The empty chair exercise can be helpful in resolving some of these internal conflicts. So check out your handout because this can be another very good technique. We also look at recovery. We look at that recovery is possible. And these are the ways in which we want to help families begin to recover from their own experience of addiction, whether or not their loved one does recover themselves. Not all individuals will enter and remain in recovery. And even if that is the case, we can still support family members in self-determination, hope, resilience, a sense of who I am, and then I know what recovery is not, my awareness of my own humanity, my own meaning and purpose, and connection with other people, other things, other values of mine, dreams, hopes, wishes, goals, ways to still for me to connect with life, even as I have a loved one that is struggling with addiction. Also, check out this resource, which I provided on your resource links. It has a list of many different resources available for family members around addiction. It's such a great find. And so you will find this link on your resources. Again, in your handouts, you will find all of the different handouts. And then just wanted to look at some of the questions. Catherine, you said, I work with a family where the spouse seems to play the roles of both the enabler and hero. Do we see that often? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, there are family members that can go between usually two different roles. And part of what we do is we want to help that family member. First, we want to normalize that this is very normal that people and families adopt certain roles. And we want to help family members identify which of these roles do you think you might be going into once you give the client each of those descriptions? So yes, we definitely see that there can be dual roles. And how can one deal with a family member, Beverly, who does not accept that he has a problem? My best suggestion is to connect with one of those community resources. Al-Anon, NAMI Family to Family Program, Smart Recovery for family members, because that support from other family members who can say, I also have a loved one who is denying they have a problem, and here's how I have coped. That peer-to-peer support is really invaluable. We can provide some support, but that peer-to-peer support, that is going to be one of the best options for family members. And then I also wanted to recommend some really great books. These are going to be books either for you as a practitioner or also some great books for family members. And so feel free to check out any of these. These are just amazing books. And Beverly, to your question as well, any of these books or many of these books would also be great resources for family members to be able to really have a deeper understanding of addiction. Some of these are memoirs. And so they are family members talking about how they dealt with their loved one's addiction in all of the different ways that we've talked about today. Okay, so as a last note, before I turn things back over to the wonderful ICAN staff, just wanted to thank you all so much for being here. I know an hour goes by very quick, but I hope that this was helpful to get you thinking about how we can continue to support family members. For a deeper dive, check out your resource links. You're going to find so many great resources in addition to your handouts. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And Angela and October, I will turn it back over to you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You did an amazing job. So thank you so much. I know that everybody's super appreciative. I can see that in the chat. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just going to show you ICANotes really quickly. If you'll just hold on for just 1 minute, I will share my screen and we'll go through ICANotes Plus. Now, how many of you are current ICANotes customers? I'd like to know. Can you put in the chat if you feel comfortable dropping that in the chat? Current ICANotes customers. And everybody is echoing what a wonderful job you did. And you did, absolutely. So we've got some customers in there. Fantastic. Crystal, Wanda, thank you. Lisa, Melvin, great. Melanie, Nicole, they're fantastic. All right. So what you're looking at now is ICANotes Plus. So if you're a classic customer, you're like, this does not look like my ICANotes. This is the kind of the newer version of ICANotes. And so as you can see, what you're staring at now is the clinician reminder sheet in ICANotes Classic, but it is more of a dashboard. We're moving more to the dashboard features and it has a lot nicer. It's a prettier view, right? It's definitely a prettier view. It shows you how many notes you have done, how many in progress, all of your notes. And then I can move to the chart room. Still looks like the chart room on Classic, but as I move to the charts, you'll see it's a little bit different. We do have most of all of the same features here. You can look at appointment history. You can start your telehealth session directly from here. You can order labs out and then also receive them in, which in Classic, you can get them in, but you can't order them out. But that has changed in Plus. And so we're able to order labs out. But you also see we have the complete evaluation, we have forms and assessments in here. We do have the progress notes, we have case management notes, quick notes. There's the couple and family therapy note. So I'm able to go in there. And then we have a SOAP note, which we don't have in the Classic program. So we have clinical messages and therapy groups and clinical summaries and discharge summaries and all of those wonderful things. So we can go into the couples family therapy. I'm just going to pop in here for a second. And I can say the group type that this is family therapy. And we could talk about what the focus is today. Maybe it is on treatment planning and maybe signs of relapse. And then also maybe expressions of feelings. And then we could talk about who was present today. So you're able to put that in here. I could say it's a family and then what family members were in the group today. And then the leader interventions, what you did, right? Maybe you set limits and boundaries, offered therapeutic interpretations. And then we can talk about everyone's participation, if they were engaged, active and engaged, not engaged, maybe verbally aggressive, those types of things happen. We could talk about physical behavior in here, if we're doing artwork and themes. We could talk about verbal content in here as well. We can address suicidality and homicidality in here, and then talk about plan, even stages of change. One of the nice things is you're able to link in the treatment plans here. So I can link in the treatment plan and select from my list. I'm just giving an example here. Maybe it's anxiety. I would definitely have treatment plans related to the family, which we absolutely have in ICANotes. And then I could say that we would talk about the different interventions that they have here. So I can select 1 or 2 interventions, link them into the treatment plan, and then say they're doing really good and that we are going to continue the current plan. Folks are not always doing good, as you can see. You can say, well, the problem is worse or minimal. And so you can do this on every single note. And I can type anything in this area that I want as well, as you can see me typing in. And then I can link that into the notes. So you're able to enter private notes, which is really important, especially with right now. I'm sure you're aware of information blocking and the Cures Act. If you're not, we have some wonderful compliance webinars on that. But as far as note sharing, so I'm able to enter private notes, and that doesn't actually go with the note. You can justify level of care as well. I can put that in the history or the instructions. And I could say, you know what, it's family stabilization treatment that we're going through. And outpatient maybe is still needed because it's interfering on their effect on their relationship, and it requires continued treatment because they're unable to self-alleviate. So I can follow those things in, and then I can compile and preview this note as well. So I just showed you some of the click buttons in the note itself. It makes your note a lot easier to create. And it looks like I have a really great note here, right? I spent a lot of time on this note. I can download it. I can print it. I can electronically sign it. I'm going to come back into the work area to show you some really nice things that I can change. So let's go into present today. So if I didn't like these things and I didn't think that these would work for me, I could roll and I could move these around. So maybe I only do family and marital. I don't do group. I could come in here and remove group, or I could also add custom content. Okay. I could say this was court ordered. And then I would type in a custom button that says court ordered therapy. I'm just making an example here. And then I could save. And so then when I get out of content mode, you saw group is gone, family, marital, couple there is, and then court ordered is there as well. So that's one of the really nice things. You hit court ordered right there. So you have custom buttons here, which you can create a custom button. You just watch me do that. But you also can do it from this area as well. So in Classic, our buttons are stable in this area. You can't move them around, where in the Plus, you can move them around. If court ordered was what I did most, I would move it up to the very top. And so quite my quick little example there. A couple other features I just want to show you really quickly. We do, for folks that are wondering, we do have, if I'll roll into a progress note, I want to show you another great feature that we have. We do have the ambient scribe feature. So basically the ambient scribe is where, and not you can use this on ICANotes, you don't have to, but basically I can select whether I'm doing a telehealth session or an in-person session. It will transcribe the session for me,
and it will put it in the note. Now, we're a little bit different than other companies. They will record the session, they will hold that recording, and then they will hold the transcription. We do not do that. We talk to a lot of clinicians, and attorneys could request recordings of sessions. That is something they could do. And so a lot of clinicians said, you know what, I want to get the transcription, but when I create that note, I don't want the recording to be there, and I don't want that transcription to say, I just want my note. But I'd like to look at the transcription and then create the note. And so that Ambient Scribe does that. So it makes documentation a lot quicker and better. And that's what ICANotes is for, right? It was created by clinicians, and we want to make sure that people spend less time on documenting, more time in patient care, right? A couple other things that ICANotes Plus has is in the calendar. You can, with your calendar, you have your online scheduling link. So you could take this, copy it, put it directly into your website, right? So people could just schedule with you. And you set up the schedule, of course, you completely control that, but you can set up that schedule. And so just a lot of great things here. We have lots of reports within ICANotes. We have statements. We have your text messaging, your reminders, so you can help individuals with no-shows. And we have a really advanced portal for patients coming in. They fill out their assessments, and that will go into your assessment in the portal. So the patients can literally come in, they'll fill out their social history, past psych history, and that, if you want it to, that will flow into your documentation to make your back record more robust. Now, not everybody wants that, so not everybody opts for that. It just does come with the program. Settings in here as well. We have calendar settings, client portal settings, practice reminder settings, revenue cycle management, your forms. We put your forms in there. So if you have current forms, we put those in. And you guys know how important forms are. As the Chief Clinical and Compliance Officer for ICANotes, I always tell people your mental health forms, the forms that you have people signing when they come in, literally can make or break you as far as liability, right? So that's why it's so important to have the right forms and put more forms into the system. So your mental health forms, we put those into the system. You've got note settings, account management, and these are other settings in here that you can set up, but then you also have personal preferences as well. So for all your note settings, doing your defaults, calendar settings, all of these things, telehealth, all of these things in here. So just a really nice system. And one thing for the folks that were ICANotes customers, out for a second, I want to show you one thing that actually makes folks really happy. Let's go here. The login time here, and as you can see me clicking around, the login time is less than 5 seconds. So if you're a classic customer, that's not what it is, right? So this is much, much faster, in my opinion, prettier. And so that is the demo of ICANotes Plus. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And thank you for hanging in. And then also, thank you so much for attending the webinar today. I always think it's wonderful when clinicians come to get more education and training, because that just shows how dedicated you are to the field. And the world that we live in right now, we need more people like you. Okay, so thank you for everything you do. I know your job is not easy, and we appreciate you so much. So thank you for attending today, and I hope everyone has an absolutely wonderful day. All right, thank you. Thank you. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.